Hey there, welcome back. The next part of the sequence that we're going to be deep diving into is vitality. And just to remind you, make sure that you have your mat rolled out, you have blocks, you have a water bottle. And so we'll be workshopping the poses together. We're going to go over the traditional alignment of each pose, the common defaults, and then also the modifications that you could offer students and yourself. Vitality begins in crescent lunge. And so in crescent lunge, the knee is over the ankle, the hip in the front is in line with the knee, creating a 90-degree angle in the front leg. And then in the back foot, the heel is over the toe mounds, and the toe mounds of the back foot are pressing into the floor. Now, a couple of common defaults that you might see in the pose are someone's way forward like this, and the hips dumping down. And we don't want that to happen here because they could really injure the knee. So have them pull the knee back. So go ahead and try that. Bring the knee way forward and don't stay there long. Bring it back. Okay, now switch legs. Another common default are the feet could be pigeon-toed in or out. Get the feet on 12 o'clock. The next default could be the lower back crunching down, and there's no integrity in keeping the pelvis neutral, so it could dump way forward. And so you would bring the pelvis neutral, pull it up. Go ahead and try that. Or dead hands above the head, and you'll bring the hands into Hasta the fingers engaged. A modification that you could offer in crescent lunge is bringing the knee to the ground. You could also do this with a block underneath of the knee or a blanket underneath of the knee if you're going to be holding the pose for a long time. The next pose of vitality is twisting crescent lunge. I'm going to turn it toward you first. So it's the same in the bottom half as crescent lunge without the twist. In the top half, the spine remains straight and the shoulder blades are integrated. The thumbs traditionally rest right at the center of the chest. A couple of defaults here, you can see the chest collapsing onto the thigh, and you'll notice the hands are way up high by the shoulders. So try that, see what that feels like here in your body. And then bring it back. Another common default is the leg giving out in the back and the hips drooping. See what that feels like? You kind of just lose your power in the bottom half of the body. And then you'll bring it back, lift the back of the thigh up toward the ceiling. You can see the shoulders collapsing in and the chest collapsing. And then bring it back to neutral, and you switch sides, and you switch legs as well. The head could be dangling down like this. That could be a common default. And pull the head up, pull the chin toward the neck. Now, a couple of really awesome modifications for crescent lunge are just like the regular crescent lunge without the twist. You can bring the knee to the ground with the twist, or the student could have the knee on the ground and move right into the twist. Or, in addition to, either or, you could Keep the knee on the ground and bring a hand down to a block. Or you could have the knee off the ground and bring the hand down to a block. Bring the ground up to the student, or bring the ground up to yourself. Go ahead and try it now with the block underneath the hand, or the knee on the ground. See how it feels in your body. Where does it bring more ease in the body for you? So you can offer it to your students in the future. The next pose would be chair pose, but since we went over that in the previous video during the awakening session, we're going to go over twisting chair instead. So in twisting chair pose, you want the feet on 12 o'clock. The hips and the bottom half remain the same as they would in a regular chair pose. Turn this way, you can see it this way as well. The upper half is what's doing the twisting. Okay, so what you might see is the hips go out, one hip moves back, and you'll see a knee moving forward. This would be a common default, because you lose the integration in the bottom half of the body when you move to the twist. However, what you could offer soon here is to bring the knees in alignment, pull them next to one another, and it'll get the hips neutral. You might also see the chest collapsing onto the thigh. And if you see this, go ahead and try it first, actually. You lose power in the upper half of the body. And now pull the hands back to the center of the chest. A couple of modifications you could offer in twisting chair pose. One really simple modification is bringing a block between the thighs. If you have a block with you or an object with you that's similar to a block, place it between the thighs now. And what you'll do is you'll take the twist with the block, but instead of the elbow hooking onto the outside of this knee, you're actually going to bring the block, or your elbow to the block in between the legs. So it's not as deep as a twist. It's much more accessible for people who might have limitations in the body to get their elbow to their knee. You could also have your student or yourself bring your hand down to a block. You could do this with the block between the thighs or not. You could also take chair pose in a chair and twist with the elbow on the thigh or the knee in the chair. Let's talk about yogi toe lock and gorilla pose. In yogi toe lock, the feet are underneath of the hip sockets. So you might see people take the feet really, really wide or really, really close together. And what we're going for is just neutral. Heels right underneath of the hips. Then take your peace fingers and wrap them around the big toes. And the upper body hangs forward, similar to ragdoll and similar to a forward fold, except that the fingers are wrapped around the big toes. You could offer someone to take ragdoll instead of yogi toe lock if they can't get their hands all the way down to the feet as a modification. You'll try that. Notice, if you have really tight hamstrings and you couldn't reach there, this would be more accessible for you. Or you could offer student hands in the blocks. A default that you might see here also are really straight legs, and this cuts off, as we know, we went over in the last couple of videos, when you lock your knees, it cuts off the mobility in the pelvis, so you might see locked knees. See what that feels like here in yogi toe lock. And what you'll do is just slightly bend the knees and notice you'll fold a whole lot deeper. The next pose would be Gorilla Asana. Full palms underneath the feet and your toes go all the way up to the creases of your wrists. And the defaults are pretty similar to the ones in Yogi Toe Lock. You could still offer hands on blocks or ragdoll. They can still take that. But something that you'll see often is that people can't reach their toes, or they can't quite get the full palm underneath of the feet. Offer people to bend the knees more, and it'll allow them to fold deep enough to maybe get their hands under a little bit more. But if they can't reach their toes at all, again, offer them ragdoll or hands on a block. Crow pose. Let's talk about the alignment of crow pose first. So, crow pose, you want the hands to land right underneath the shoulders, the shoulder width distance apart. You can stand up, or however you are seated, bring your hands out in front of you and have them in line with the shoulders. This is what you want to create, but with your hands on the ground. So now go ahead, place your hands on your yoga mat. Now look at the feet. Get the feet so they're touching, the toes are together. And if your feet are way back here, I want you to walk them up until you can't take them up anymore. Notice here, my hips are really, really high. So keep them up there, keep them up high. They've got to go higher than you probably think that they need to go. Now, from here, you'll lean forward and begin to bend the elbows. Bring the knees to the back of your arm bones. And you lean forward, look forward, breathe, of course. Press down through the hands. Pull the belly in and up. Flex the feet. And then maybe you'll lift a foot, or maybe both feet will come off of the ground. And even if your feet don't leave the ground, you're still doing crow pose. So what your work could be, and what you could offer students, is just working the pressing down, pulling in, and lifting up action in the body to strengthen the muscle so that eventually they could perhaps bring their toes off the ground. Now, if someone is working with an injury, you could offer them to stay there with the toes on the ground, or they could take yogi squat, which looks like this. If they need something even more easeful, guess what? They can do that. You could place a block underneath of your bottom or your student's bottom and take yogi squat, just like this. Let's talk about a couple of common defaults that you might see in crow pose. Sometimes you'll see students bring their hands way too close together. And what that does is it gets just unstable. And also when the hands are really, really wide, it takes away the stability because you're not giving yourself the correct base to lift up from. If it's wider than the shoulders, it's not going to work. If it's too closer together than the shoulders, it's not going to work. It's got to be your shoulder width distance apart. Everybody's body is different. So if the hands are too close together, bring them out underneath of the shoulders. Another thing that you might see here are the feet out really wide when taking crow pose, and the student will not bring their feet together and do kind of a balancing act like this. Have them bring the feet together. What's not happening there is the core contraction or Uddiyana Bandha or Mula Bandha. When the feet are together, they can hug the belly in and lift up from the core instead of just stacking bones and balancing. So bring the feet together and take crow pose. Press down, pull the belly in, lift up, and come down. And then try it with the feet wide. And notice how it doesn't quite feel right in the body. For me, it's taking a whole lot of extra energy that doesn't need to happen. Another thing that's really helpful in crow pose is to have the student looking forward to the top of the mat instead of down or back. When you take your drishti down or behind you in crow pose, it's completely disorienting. You want to look forward, have the body moving forward. Okay, that gets us complete with vitality. Now, we're moving into equanimity, the standing poses. The first pose in equanimity is eagle pose, which looks like this. The right arm goes under, and the right arm goes under, and the right leg goes over, and you sit down like chair pose. A couple of common defaults that you'll see here is the chest collapsing and the arms collapsing. Go ahead and try that. And you might take note what's happening in your own body. For me, my shoulders are completely disintegrated now, and I just feel totally off balance. I lift up, pull the arms back in. You might see the foot in the air hanging out. Put in Pada Bandha, flex the foot, pull it in toward the calf. And switch sides. Something you could offer a student here as a modification is to just simply bring their foot down into a kickstand position, so it's holding their body up instead of balancing. If someone's shoulders are too tight to do the twist with the arms, you could offer them to grab opposite shoulders. They could bring their arms down. They could have their hands at prayer. They could even take chair pose arms. You could also, if the student can't get their foot on the ground, have them put a block next to them and take eagle pose with their toes on a block, like so, just like this. And again, it's like bringing the ground up to the student or up to you, instead of having to reach all the way down to get contact with the floor. The next pose is standing leg raise on the right side. So the student, which looks like this, you could grab your knee and open up to the side, or you could grab your toe or the outside of your foot and open up to the side. A really, really common default here in standing leg raise is the hips being not neutral, the pelvis not neutral. So often a student will think, hey, I can grab my toe, but what will happen is the hip goes up like this. We want to keep the hip neutral. And if they can't keep the toe and the hips neutral at the same time, then have them grab the knee. There's nothing wrong with that. You will also see your students with their feet just hanging out in the air in standing leg raise, and remind them to engage the foot. So do that now. Take standing leg raise, let the foot relax, and then bring it back to life. You might also see rounding in the shoulders. Go ahead and try that. And then pull the spine back into the body. a modification that is gonna stay with us through the standing poses is your best friend, the wall, okay? You can take all of the standing poses with the wall. You can have your student walk over to the wall, put one hand on it, and open up the standing leg raise. Airplane pose, let's do it. From standing leg raise, you send the leg back. The standing foot is on 12 o'clock. My leg is in line with my upper body. My hands are facing toward the ground. And my drishti is also looking toward the ground. A common default that you'll see here is the foot sickling. No energy in the hands and feet. And bring them to life. Put them back in the game. Engage the muscles. I'm going to switch sides here. I'm going to face forward actually. Another thing that you'll see is the foot not on 12 o'clock. Could be facing out. It could be facing in. It's not quite on 12 o'clock. And they're bound to be wobbly when this is the case. So take your foot off of 12 o'clock here. Let yourself get a little wobbly so you can experience it for yourself. And then put the foot on 12 o'clock. And notice what a big difference that makes. Another default is locking the standing leg, which is another theme that you'll see throughout all of the standing poses. When you lock the joints, it makes it a whole lot harder to stay balanced and to use the muscles. So, lock the joints, see what that feels like, and then give yourself a little bit of a bend. Use the muscles in the legs instead of the joint. You know, and then you could even wobble a little bit, and then it'll keep you in the pose, even if you're a little bit wobbly. Modifications here for airplane pose. This could be airplane pose for some people with the toe still on the ground, or just a little itty bitty baby hover, or here, or here, or here. People don't have to be in a straight horizontal line for it to be airplane pose. They could have their toe 2 inches off the ground, and that's still great. You could also offer people the wall. They could hold onto the wall with one hand and send the leg back. It'll give them more stability. Go find a wall and try airplane pose with your hand on the wall. You can pause this video and try it out. All right, let's look at half moon. Half moon we take from airplane pose most of the time. And you just shift the pelvis to face either the right side or the left side of the room, depending on the leg or the ground. My spine is straight. Both of my feet are flexed. The one on the ground is facing 12 o'clock. A couple of defaults that you'll see in the pose here are curving in the spine. Notice how my body's leaning toward the ground. And up here, I am not integrated, not in tune with alignment. You might also see the foot hanging flimsy, and the hand in the air flimsy, and now this pose has become torturous. Woo! Okay, so don't do that. We'll try it now and see what that feels like in the body. Okay, so flimsy foot, flimsy hand, upper body disintegrated. Now flex the foot, flex the hand, pull the spine into the body, lengthen the leg, lengthen the spine. Boom. Now, a couple of modifications that are really helpful here. You can bring a hand down to a lock on whichever height feels correct for your body. And it's just bringing the ground up to you. Sometimes people's legs are longer than their torso, and so them reaching the ground is not accessible. You can also bring it to the highest setting. And some people have no problem touching the ground. Every body is different. And the other modification that is phenomenal here is the wall. Okay, so you take one hip to the wall, and you can just lean up against it and take it. Go find a wall in your house right now and try this. It is so good, and it feels incredible. You could press your pelvis open a bit more because you have the sturdiness and the steadiness of the wall to hold you up. Dancer pose. Excuse me, not coronavirus. Dancer pose. Stand on your mat. Do a backwards thumbs up. Send the thumb behind you. Lift the other arm up toward the ceiling. And now you're going to grab the ankle with the thumbs up, but the fingers will wrap around the ankle. This is how you are to grab the ankle in dancer's pose. In dancer's pose, my standing foot is on 12 o'clock. My chest is facing toward the front of my yoga mat. My hands and feet are flexed, and my hips are squared toward the ground. A common default that you might see in the pose is someone taking the most extravagant dancer pose, but forgetting integration in the hips and in the upper body. So what that might look like is this, just really going for it. It's gonna take me off balance, I'll try it again. Looks like this, just really going for it. Notice how this hip is not squared to the ground. This arm is going haywire over here. And although it might seem like I'm taking this beautiful back bend, Instagram-worthy back bend, you don't want to do that because you could end up injuring yourself in the long run. So, instead of having the hip go out and lift up more than the other hip, I want you to start from center. And just move straight forward and straight back. Straight forward, straight back. Just switch legs. Take the arm forward, the shin bone back, and keep this hip squared to the ground. Another common default is the standing foot off of 12 o'clock, so you might take it with the toes facing in. And this will take you off of center right off the bat because the pose starts from the ground up. So take it off 12 o'clock, take dancer. Okay, come out, put it on 12 o'clock, and take dancer pose. Notice the difference, the stability is there. A modification that you could offer a student is just grabbing the ankle right here, staying right here. And then perhaps they can move out a little bit or a little bit more. No forcing, but have them move to their edge. So it'll look different for everyone. The other modification would be the wall, put the hand on the wall, and take dancer pose. Go find a wall and give it a shot. Okay, the final pose in equanimity is tree pose. And tree pose can look a lot of different ways. In Baptiste yoga, we take it with the foot on the thigh, hands together at the chest. A couple of modifications for this pose. You could bring the foot down to a kickstand. You could also use a block and bring the foot up a little bit. Or the foot could land on the calf. Or, again, the wall. Put the elbow on the wall. And bring the foot to the thigh, the calf, or kickstand on the floor. A couple of defaults commonly seen in tree pose. The standing foot not on 12 o'clock. And as I've said many times in this video, when the foot's off of 12 o'clock, the rest of the pose is doomed to be disintegrated and totally unstable. So, take the foot off 12 o'clock in tree pose, see what that feels like in your body. Okay, now put it on 12 o'clock. Take notes in your head. How does that feel? Where in the body do you feel different when the foot's on 12 o'clock? You might also see the chest caving forward. And so do that. Let the chest cave forward. And now bring it back. Woo. Bring the spine back into center. Notice how that feels in the body. Switch legs. In tree pose, you might see a bunch of different hand variations in the room, and none of them are wrong. This is just the most simple form of the pose with the hands together. And if they're integrated in the body, they can take it wherever they would like.
This concludes Asana Lab for Vitality and Equanimity. If you have any questions about the modifications, the defaults in the poses, and the alignment, go ahead and use the comment sections if you have any questions. We're here to help. I hope you got something out of this video, and I will see you in the next one.